What's up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to talk about it Tuesday here with Chop It Up with Chi. Coming to you from St. Paul, Minnesota, the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Before I get into the video, being that I am here in Minnesota, I just have to keep it real with y'all. I'm just not really, you know, feeling this topic, but I promised that I would do it a couple of weeks ago, and then, all of this havoc started breaking out in my city. It is definitely affecting my family in different ways, which I talked about on another video, and I will talk about again. But just know that it's really it's challenging. It's challenging to come in this space and talk about things that seem trivial, that don't matter. I really wanted to be on camera for this last final installment of the cult of the Real Housewives, about Mary Cosby from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I wanted to get on camera. I wanted to make some parallels between the what I experienced in the church for 20 years, and some of what I see, how they abuse that fine line um, in Mary Cosby Church, and just the way that some of the things are real, that some of the people in the documentary discussed about the control and the hierarchy and almost the worship of the leader. Like I said before, I would not say that I was in a cult. Many people that I've crossed paths with in my life when I was about that church life, and I definitely was, foot stomping, hand clapping, tongue talking, Pentecostal sanctified woman. And that's from a little song we used to do, the hand clapping, foot stomping, and I used to love that. What kind of church is this? It's a sanctified church. What kind of church is this? It's a sanctified church. It's a hand clapping, foot stomping, tongue talking, Pentecostal sanctified church. And so, in those charismatic churches, it is a very, very fine line. It really is, between respect and reverence for the leader, the bishop, the pastor, the elders, but mainly the one who stands behind the pulpit, the one who was considered, the leader. It's just, it's very close to worship. It's a type of worship. It crossed the line between, I just reverence and respect this person as the man or woman of God, and it turns into, this person is literally controlling your life, but you go along with it because you have, accepted the fact that you were placed here by God under the leadership and direction of the man or woman of God. And therefore, everything that the leader is telling you is from God directly for you. And so you kind of, just go along with it. You don't want to be rebellious. You don't want to go against God, that type of thing. So I wanted to, just be really into this topic when I did the last installment. But like I said, guys, it's just, it's a lot going on here. And I'll talk about that in another video. So I hate to, I don't want to say I'm going to rush through it, but it is kind of an abbreviated version of what I wanted to do. So just to briefly recap, I believe I left off where, well, we had gotten through, the fact that uh, Mama, that everybody called Mary's grandmother Mama raised Mary and her sister. She had 4 children. Um, and she left Indianapolis and went to Salt Lake City because she felt that she was called by God, to go to Salt Lake City and plant a church. And she built a ministry there. She built businesses there. I have to tell you, just researching and learning about Mary Cosby's grandma, who everybody called Mama, she to me seemed like the genuine article. She seemed like she was just all about God, and that she was no nonsense, that she was sweet, but she was no nonsense about God. She seemed like she was very loving and caring, and just wanted to take the world in. That's just the energy that you feel watching her. She just seemed very, very sincere, which makes the story even more infuriating. So I had gotten through that part because I did the first two episodes, and so we gotten to the point where Mary was disfellowshipped by her grandmother. And the people in the documentary, from her sister and just to very close congregants that grew up with her, these are people who have been at this church their whole life. Like from kids, like how my kids would their experience was, because I believe that, let me see, my oldest is probably around 8. I'm gonna say she was around 8 years old. So my kids are like 3 years apart. So I think my youngest was like, look, I'm counting on my fingers, but you get the idea. They were, very, very young when I, got saved and dedicated my life to the Lord. And I was the type of parent that when you see me in the church, my kids are in the church. And lucky for me, they loved going. I didn't have the type of experience I've heard some parents talk about, my kids don't want to go. I got to drag them to church like that. And maybe it was because that was all that we had. I don't have any brothers and sisters. Both my parents were deceased. I actually got saved right after my dad died. That's when I guess I don't know. I was just at the end of my rope, and I just felt so alone. And but that's another story for another video. And so I I think that they just kind of, that was just something new, and it was something that they could look forward to doing every week. And back when I got saved, we had church on Sunday in the morning. So we had Sunday school, then morning service, and we had a break in between, and evening service. And we all looked forward to evening service because that's where we could cut up and have the Holy Ghost and jump and dance. And it was like, a Holy Ghost party. That's where we could have a good time. And so then we would have church on Tuesday night, and then we would have Thursday night, and then all day on Saturday with different auxiliary meetings and choir practice. And that was our life. And we, in the sanctified church and the Pentecostal apostolic, we always say we don't just go to church, it's a lifestyle. And it really was a lifestyle, very insulated into ourselves. And we didn't really deal with people who weren't a part of our church or one of our sister churches, or they were a part of a ministry like ours. So we were in church all the time. And so all the people in the documentary, they, I could really relate to them because they have been in that church since they were kids. And some of them were family, so they were interconnected that way. So everybody talked about how Mary was always a problem, how she was spoiled, how she was always starting trouble, and how she was always materialistic and money hungry. They all had the same story, and they all said that she was always that way. They said that, her grandmother loved her like she loved everyone and really tried to work with her. Mary was, estranged from her mom. They never really dug too deep into why. They did say that during the filming of this documentary that her mom did pass away. But they didn't really say, why Mary was not, close to her mother. And so at a certain point, her grandmother, being the woman of God, being that, she's bringing all this to the church, which I talked about in my last video, that this is a real thing, that you could get what we call sat down in the church if you were doing a lot of things out in the street that were considered worldly, and you were well known at their church, and it's coming back to the pastor or the bishop, you can get sat down, meaning you can't function in the church. But she was disfellowship. Now, in my church, in our, denomination, to get this fellowship, you would have had to have gone through, first of all, you're going to be meeting with the pastor. He's not going to sit you down right away. You're going to be meeting with the pastor. Things are coming back. You're doing this, that, and the third. You're going to get a talking to. Then if it keeps happening, whatever it is, whether you're fornicating or whatever it is, you being seen at the clubs, you're partying, you're kicking it, whatever. Now you might get into being sat down. Now, if you just are really a terror and, it's just, I mean, I can't even think of anybody that I know of, maybe one person through my 20 years or so in the church that was disfellowship, maybe one person. Um, so it wasn't something that was really rushed to because all of the ministries that I was involved in always kind of had the view that this is the Lord's house. I'm a vessel of God. It's not for me to put anyone out of God's house. As long as they want to keep coming, then it's on me as the leader of the church to keep praying for them, keep working with them, keep ministering to them. So it would have to be like highly egregious behavior for you to get disfellowshipped from an apostolic or Pentecostal church. But whatever the case was, maybe her grandmother had been dealing with this behavior always, just like everybody in her orbit was saying in a documentary, and she just had it. Now, she said she was disfellowship, but she was still welcome at the church, which is, again, that's different. Like, to me, it sounded like she was sat down. If you're disfellowship, you are literally not welcome at the church. You cannot come. So, but that's, how Mama did it. So, shortly after Mama was disfellowship, shortly after Mama disfellowship Mary, she died. And so we already know the story that, this girl ended up marrying her grandpa. This man married Mama when Mary was 3 years old. He watched her grow up. So I talked about that in the other videos, and the story's out there, already. But so I'm just going to kind of just skip ahead a little bit. So basically, they take over the church, which to me, as my mom would have said, you got a special seat in hell, for some things you do, a special seat. My mom used to always say, like, when people were like, that's how I would know if somebody was like really, really out there or really did something really horrible. She'd say, yeah, they're going to go to hell with gasoline draws on. That's what my mom used to say. And as a kid, I'd be like, ooh, I just can't imagine that, It just sounded awful. And so to take over, to to marry your grandpa, then have the nerve, the audacity to step into the pulpit and say that God said that someone else was going to come in the form of Mama. And if you knew Mama, then you should know me. And that's something that I've noticed was a trend throughout watching the 3 episode series. What her and Robert Cosby, who is her grandfather husband, they will say when they were, trying to brainwash their congregants, if you know God, if you trust God, you should trust me, because they started to, Mary said that she was God. They said that people believed that she was God, which is why that is a cult. That's a cult. You look at any cults down through the years, look at now if you're young, you ain't gonna know, but if you look it up, Jonestown, he ended up giving everybody, forcing them to drink the poison. Koresh, I believe, David Koresh said he was God. Um, there's quite a few, and I didn't research them to talk about them here, but that's a red flag. If you're ever in any house of worship and you start to hear that kind of talk from the leadership where they're kind of letting you know that God has come back in them or that they're Jesus, like, you need to run quickly, fast. But to do that, first of all, you were disfellowship. And then you have the nerve to stand in the pulpit. I mean, I am not Christian anymore, but that's just something that is like, wow. It's disrespectful just on a human level. It's just disrespectful. So they do that, and then it's so much, y'all. I don't want to make the video too long. I'm already at 15 minutes, but if you're interested in it, all I can say is it's a good watch, because there's a couple that, and I'm gonna insert them here. There's a couple that he was supposed to be. I don't know how, but he was supposed to be their grandparents too, and they started to try to drive a wedge between these people in a way that was so crazy. I can't even really explain it without having more time. Like, they tried to make the wife seemed like she was being inappropriate, and that she was mistaking her love for Robert as her pastor. She was mistaking it for being in love with him, and then he was sending her all these messages saying, "You're in love with me, don't you love me, don't you?" And all this kind of weird stuff. And then Mary started accusing the woman of wanting her life. Just weird stuff. But the saddest thing, and I'm gonna probably end on this, the saddest thing through this whole thing was the fact that there was a family, two sisters and a brother, that were a part of this ministry. And the way that they destroyed this family, first of all, one of the sisters worked for the Cosbys for free. And they said that they treated this woman so bad and told her she was a slave, and that if she doesn't do what they tell her, she's going to go to hell. And like, these people are brainwashed. And this woman, she said today was so bad. She was telling one of the other congregants, today was so bad at the house, I just wish that I could just lay down and not wake up. And then I guess shortly after that, she passed away. The other sister was not allowed to go to her sister's funeral because she had been trying to tell her brother to stop giving all his money to the church, because that was another theme throughout the documentary, was the money. It's always money. We need money, 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 money. And people were giving it because they believed that Mary was God. And I just couldn't believe, that's so unbelievably evil. Christian or not, it's wicked to deny someone, because they had kicked her out of the church. I forgot to mention that, but they had kicked her out of the church. So when her sister passed away, she wasn't allowed to come to the funeral. And yeah, I'm just gonna end with that, because I just wanted to get it out, y'all, because I said that I would, and I just started, recording again this year, and I know that for the algorithm, you have to be consistent. I'm still trying to just find my zen here, like, what do I really want to do here? I know that I really want to do this only because, it's something fun and interesting for me. I work from home. I live alone, and I'm a creative. And so even though I'm alone, I'm rarely lonely because I'm always thinking of something to do. I'm trying to get back into making my jewelry and get my businesses going again. And I'm actually working on an event. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm working on an event. Now I'm here in Minnesota. This is my second, I'm in my second year. November was a whole year that I've been back, and I spent the majority of last year just getting readjusted and getting my apartment furnished, and just all of that stuff, getting used to the winter again, which I will never get used to that, but just adjusting. And I just didn't really have the bandwidth to do this or any of my other creative things. And so there's so much that I can do in this space. And I don't really want to be a slave to the algorithm. So I know I'm going to have to suffer through no views, or, like, the suppression has already happened. There was a video I put out that only got 2 views, and I kind of knew that would happen, but I'm going to revisit that again. So, there's so many ideas and things that I can do in this space. And I want to do all of them. I don't want to have a niche. I don't want to just do one thing. So anyway, y'all, go follow me over on TikTok. I got one additional follower because I had 4 for the longest time. I have 5. I get views, I get likes, but people don't follow. Same here. I get subscribers, and then YouTube takes them away. YouTube really be playing in my face, y'all. So certain things that I love to talk about will definitely get me shadow banned. They happened to me before. So I don't know, but I'm not gonna let that stop me, because if I just want to be here to have fun and meet people and just build an online organic community, which is what I originally set out to do, then it shouldn't matter if I get subscribers or not. So I'm gonna ride it out. I'm gonna stick with it. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. I will be back on Thursday for Think About It Thursday, and I really think I'm just gonna get on camera and just talk about stuff. I don't know, just to have some topics to talk about. And I really want to start getting into where I can pre-record some things and just drop them on the day of. But I appreciate the ones who do watch. And if you are watching or listening from Minnesota, keep your head on a swivel. Stay safe. And until next time, yeah, I'll see you next time here on Chop It Up with Cheek.